is that time of the day when we look at some of the headlines in the international newspapers. Joining me to discuss some of today's top stories is the social entrepreneur Claudine Reid. Claudine, thanks for joining me. Let's start, as always, with This Day Live newspaper. This is the Nigerian paper, which has a picture of Muhammadu Buhari arriving in Katsina, and it also has the headline there on the left, just by that picture: military amnesty bullying Nigeria pursuing agenda. This is after Amnesty International released a report alleging that more than 8,000 people had died in detention during a crackdown on Islamist militant group Boko Haram. The main complaint here is from the chief of the administration of the Nigerian army, who says that while Amnesty International had 4 years to carry out their investigation, they are demanding that we, the Nigerian military, report back on their findings immediately. Is that a fair complaint, given that they have come out with this fairly shocking allegation that 8,000 people died in custody, that they're not being given time to properly investigate that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting stance, and I think when we look at, when we delve further into the report, the Nigerians are saying that the very fact that they've cooperated with Amnesty International, the very fact that they've cooperated with Red Cross, means that they're willing to divulge any information. They're not holding back any secrets. There's, nothing to uncover, and so they're quite, surprised at what seems to be a very heavy-handed approach by Amnesty. But when you delve deeper and see findings like this, questions just do need to be answered. And I think that the cooperation of the Nigerians will further help Amnesty.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amnesty International obviously have a good reputation across the world.
Indeed.
And it would be, unprecedented for them to make anything up. But it is fair, isn't it, or fair to expect, if you're alleging something against someone, to give them the chance to reply, to give them the chance to look into the issue themselves and come up with their own side of the story. Absolutely.
But when you've got a history or evidence to say that there's been over 8,000 people that have died in detention centres, questions do need to be answered. And so I think the cooperation element of the situation positions Nigeria to be in a very good place to demonstrate that they are not hiding anything. And especially when you look at their track record in terms of, their former president, things were not looking too good. You've got Boko Haram still on the rampage. It doesn't look too good. So taking this stance now to cooperate with Amnesty International and the inclusion of the Red Cross is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the paper, the USA Today, the American paper, which has the headline, Hate in America, and the picture there of grieving relatives, some of the 9 people who died in that shooting on Wednesday. But as we've heard today, several relatives of the victims say they actually forgive the suspect. That's amazing, isn't it, considering how recent this attack was and how little remorse the suspect appears to have shown since then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tragic situation, and again, and the spotlight back in America, on America, for just very tragic scenarios, a situation. And I think it's a real demonstration of their Christian values, their faith values, and in what seems to be a very emotionally unstable situation. I think they've definitely taken a stance of moral courage in this situation, and one wonders, how on earth can you do this? How can you feel so how can you take this stance on such a situation? I think a lot remains to be seen. I heard that the reports are saying that there's calling for the death penalty for the shooter. And in this heightened sense of tension, again in America, where we've got these racial crimes and a lot of it is centred around his philosophy and his warped ideologies.
Yeah, do you think this incident in particular will change anything in America? We've seen President Obama has obviously come out and said this doesn't happen in other developed countries. There aren't mass killings like this on the kind of scale and regularity that there are in America. But we've seen before also he's tried to change gun laws in America and has failed to do that. Do you think this incident will change that at all?
I think this incident will go a long way to making some necessary shifts. The gun law situation has been something that's high on the agenda, and we always hear about this after a tragedy. There are numerous, countless tragedies that have happened in America where we've had shooters in schools and now in the churches. People are going to be wondering, where can we go to be safe? And the government has to be seen to be putting stronger measures in place, stronger penalties in place to deal with perpetrators of such atrocities. atrocities.
Well, let's move on to the UK paper, The Independent, which has a picture of protesters at a demonstration in Athens with the headline, "Race to save banks going under as Greeks await their ruin." This is after indications that savers in the country have withdrawn billions of euros in the past week. How important is it, Claudine, that Greece and the IMF and the European Commission reach a deal? They've been struggling for weeks now to try and get this deal, and they need a loan. They need a loan desperately to pay back some of the debt that they owe their creditors. Just how important is it that all these sides come together and agree on something?
Gosh, it's very, very important, Simon. I mean, we're looking for progress. We're looking for more stability in the economy, and when you've got your when you've got your citizens taking the savers, when you've got savers taking their money out of the bank just out of sheer fear, they don't want to lose what little investment that they have. It's very, very critical at this stage. You know, Germany's involved, everyone's involved, and all eyes are on Germany. We're looking at stability and trying to ensure that this situation doesn't cause even more civil unrest. And
it's a snowball effect, isn't it? Because for a long time, Greece and the government and the Greek central bank were all making positive noises about how a deal is going to be made. They were always the ones who were really quite positive about things. Now they've said that, yeah, leaving the euro is a possibility. Stuff like that doesn't help, does it? If you want, you know, your people are looking to your government for sort of guidance and to sort of confirm that everything's okay. When the government are themselves saying, yeah, things aren't looking great, that's when sort of a run on the bank starts, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the positive stance that they've taken, which, you know, for all intents and purposes is a good stance to take. But when you see that major decision makers are now making a shift, I think what that means for the population, what it means for the Greeks as a nation, fear. We're trying to maintain the propagation of fear here.
Yeah, well, let's move on. Another UK paper, The Guardian, has the headline, "You're wrong on Muslims, Cameron told." This is David Cameron being told he's at risk of demoralising British Muslims with his misguided emphasis on saying that some people in the community are quietly condoning Islamist extremism. That's according to his former cabinet colleague. It's after 3 Bradford women, of course, took their 9 children to Syria. Do you agree with this? Was it foolish of David Cameron to say these things?
It's a very interesting stance. We're in a desperate situation here. You've got one British suicide bomber. You've got 3 Bradford sisters taking their 9 children to side with ISIS. And when we look at their warped ideologies around democracy, around the inferiority of women, around the West being evil, David Cameron has to be seen to be taking a stance. And I think it's a very fine balance to try and deal with the situation without offending those Muslims who are not on the side of ISIS, and perhaps, you know, a clearer choice or a finer choice on the type of words that he has to use. But we are talking about a minority in a minority in a minority, and so in real terms, if we were to look at numbers, I mean, it doesn't by far represent the amount of non-Muslims who do not support ISIS. But again, when we look at Prime Minister's statement, he has to be seen to be taking a strong stance about supporting ISIS.
Yeah, you say a minority within a minority. It is a tiny fraction of the amount of billions of Muslims around the world. This is a tiny proportion. Surely it would be more helpful to give young people especially more opportunities in the job place, to make them feel more included in society, as opposed to saying to the Muslim faith, this is your problem. Surely it's something that we should all be involved in.
It's an interesting stance. I mean, definitely I agree with you there about providing opportunities, because that's what young people want. You know, it's a kind of the lesson that, you know, our parents always say, you know, the devil finds work for idle hands sort of rhetoric. But yes, exposure to opportunities and things that young people can do, but at the same time, I think it's one of the focuses that government have had for a while when dealing with communities, immigrant communities. They're looking to those communities to help bring solutions to some of their own challenges. And so, again, I refer back to this very fine line that he has to try and manage a situation, but also look to the Muslim community to try and bring on, to try and help that community also.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. Claudine Reid, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed for coming.
Thank you.